They died like that. Two of history's most shocking death in history. Imagine you are the richest man alive. Not just rich, obscenely rich. Richer than kings. Richer than gods. Armies march in your name. Senators lower their eyes when you walk past. You have spent your entire life turning the world into gold, and then your enemies capture you. And instead of a quick death, they give you exactly what you always wanted. They pour molten gold straight down your throat. And here's the thing, that's not even the story that's going to keep you up tonight. Because the second man on this list didn't die from greed. He didn't die from war. He didn't die from an enemy who hated him. He was an emperor. A legend. A man who survived everything the ancient world could throw at him. And a deer killed him. We need to talk about both of these men. Right now. The gold that killed him. Marcus Licinius Crassus was the wealthiest man in the Roman Republic, and he knew it, wore it, weaponized it. He owned silver mines, thousands of slaves, and Rome's first fire brigade, which he used as a for-profit racket, showing up to burning buildings and negotiating a price before lifting a single bucket. He wasn't just rich. He was rich in the way that corrodes a person from the inside out, where no amount is ever enough, where every new horizon just reveals another horizon beyond it. In 53 BC, chasing the military glory that Caesar and Pompey had and he didn't, he marched 7 Roman legions into Parthian territory, modern-day Iran, against every omen, every advisor, every shred of common sense telling him to stop. The Battle of Carrhae destroyed him. 20,000 Romans died in the desert. 10,000 more were dragged off in chains. And Crassus, the man who had bought half of Rome, was captured alive. What happened next, ancient sources describe with a kind of grim poetic justice that feels almost too perfect. The Parthians melted gold and poured it down his throat. You wanted it so badly, here it is. Whether that detail is precisely literal or sharpened by centuries of retelling, the core truth remains undeniable. The man who valued wealth above wisdom, above caution, above human life, died because of it. Hubris doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just hands you exactly what you asked for. High voltage bridge. Okay, breathe. Because that was death by choice. Death by ambition. Crassus built his own funeral, one greedy decision at a time, and walked into it with his eyes open. There's a twisted logic to it. A dark fairness, almost. He reached too far, and the world reached back. But the next man didn't reach for anything. He wasn't on a battlefield. He wasn't scheming for power or marching into enemy territory. He was just, outside. On a horse. On an ordinary afternoon. And that, somehow, is so much worse. 16 miles to die. Emperor Basil I had already lived one of history's most extraordinary lives before that afternoon even began. Born an absolute peasant, nothing, nobody, less than nothing in the rigid hierarchy of the Byzantine Empire, he clawed his way to the throne through sheer force of will, charm, and ruthlessness. He ruled for nearly 2 decades, reformed Byzantine law, expanded the empire's borders, and cemented a dynasty that would last for nearly 200 years. He had survived poverty, court conspiracies, political assassinations, and the brutal machinery of Byzantine power, where rivals were routinely blinded or murdered in the night. The man was, by every reasonable measure, built different. Then in 886 AD, he went deer hunting, and his belt got tangled in a stag's antlers. The deer panicked and bolted, and the Emperor of Byzantium was dragged helplessly across 16 miles of terrain before anyone could stop it. 16 miles. He survived the dragging itself, barely, only to die from the internal injuries shortly after. No enemy had plotted this. No army had marched. No poison had been slipped into his cup. A belt. An antler. A Tuesday. And just like that, the man who had beaten every odd the ancient world could manufacture, was undone by the one thing nobody could have predicted, prepared for, or prevented. History has a way of reminding even its greatest figures that control is always, always an illusion. The two kinds of tragedy. 2 men. 2 deaths. One died because he chased too much, because gold had replaced his judgment, his caution, his humanity. The other died because the universe simply didn't care how impressive his story was. And that split right there, between the tragedy you build and the tragedy that just finds you, is the tension that makes history so impossible to look away from. Crassus had every warning sign. He had advisors, omens, logic, and precedent all screaming at him to stop. He chose not to listen. Basil had no warning at all. He had nothing but bad luck and a poorly fastened belt. And yet here we are, thousands of years later, talking about both of them, because their deaths meant something. Crassus became the symbol of what greed costs you in the end. Basil became the proof that greatness offers no protection from randomness. If there's one thing these two men are still teaching us from across 2,000 years of history, it's this: the life you build matters. The choices you make matter. But some days, the deer runs anyway, and the only thing that was ever really in your hands was how you lived before that moment came.